Welcome to the Mama's Well podcast, where we're digging deep into the gifts and the gaps of foster and adoptive parenting. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here.
Mama's Well.
Yes, she is. Well, if you are new to the Mama's Well podcast, let's see. You are in a space where mamas and daddies are talking about how we can fill up so that we can better give to the kids we love. We're talking about growing ourselves up as parents through the lessons and the hard things that we go through as parents. As we're trying to help kids grow, we're growing ourselves. And so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then you're at the right place. If you're interested in talking about things that matter, real life, and being in the trenches, again, you're at the right place. And today, my guest lives in the trenches. And like many of us foster parents, she's doing hard things. She's doing hard things on, and we don't want to get caught in comparing. I was just about to say harder than me. But we're all doing hard things. And what's hard to one is horrifyingly hard to another. And what's easy to one might not be easy to another. So we don't want to get caught up in comparing. But my guest today is her and her husband are choosing to do some really hard things, and it's quite inspiring. So I'm excited to sit down and listen to the stories today because I don't know this woman very well, but I can guarantee you I will. So welcome, Chelsea Floro.
Chelsea,
see? Chelsea Floro.
That's okay.
Floro. See, I'm going to get it right. There,
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Chelsea Floro.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for being here. And just to let everybody know, I have been following you on social media for a while. You're a friend on Facebook because we have some mutual friends.
Right.
Come to find out, we live in the same area.
Yes.
Didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But I've been inspired by your news feed and your posts for a while now. Will you just introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit, maybe even about how you grew up, how you met your husband, and then how you. Well, let's just start with that. How you grew up, how you met your husband, and then we'll go from there.
So I grew up just here in Tomball, Texas, small town. I went to a small private school growing up. Concordia.
Oh yeah.
Salem,
Still there.
Concordia.
Yeah.
Yep. Went to college in Austin. My husband was my sister's best friend growing up. And when I was 15, we started dating, and we actually got married when I was 18.
Okay.
So we were young. Nobody thought we would make it. We kind of had the, side eye from a lot of people. They were like, oh, yeah, okay. And here we are. We've been together 17 years,
Wow.
and we're on our 14th. We just celebrated last week our 14th year of marriage.
Wow. Congratulations.
So, yeah, thank you.
Well, you know what? You have to have a strong marriage to do what you're doing.
Yes.
So, what are you doing? I know you're a foster mom.
Yes.
I know you are a vlogger, which is like such a young term, it seems like young people talk about that. But tell me a little bit, tell everybody, first of all, about your story into foster care. How did you get started?
So my husband and I, when I was pretty young, since we got married young, we started having kids young. We had 2 biological kids, and then we could not have a third child. And I really wanted another child. I told my husband, I was like, let's look at adoption. And he's like, no, we've got a boy and a girl. There's nothing else that we need. We're good. Yeah. So I was like, no, I think we're gonna need to do this. So I kept looking into it, and he was like, no, not gonna happen. I begged and cried and whined and did all of the things, and nothing changed his heart. And so I spent about a good year just praying. Like I said, I have to lay it all down, and I have to just pray. And we were at dinner with some of our friends who are foster parents, and they they're fostering little babies. And my husband, when we got home, he's like, all right, let's just take the information class. Let's just see. So we took the information class.
I know how that goes.
Yeah. And so we took the information class, and he's like, all right, well, let's plan this out. We'll finish in a year. So then next year.
Okay.
And then after the second class, he's like, let's just take him and see how long this takes us. And 7 months later, we were licensed. So our plan was just to adopt one, like I said, perfect child. We had no knowledge of trauma or any of that. And, they teach you those things. And we have a child with autism. And so when they were teaching the classes, we were like, wow, this, what they're talking about trauma, it sounds a lot like autism. It kind of sounded like my son. He's high functioning. And so I was like, oh, this isn't going to be any different than that. We've been through that. So we were like, we're just going to adopt one perfect baby, that has suffered no trauma or anything. Yeah. That was our goal 7 years ago.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
They go into it. And don't we all go into things like from that naive place of like, even parenting, I was talking to a parent of 10 recently, and they have children that are grown, and then they have adopted children that are little, and their older children were struggling, and they were describing how when they first started parenting, like they thought that if you just did all of these, we're talking about our expectations. Isn't that what we're talking about? Like all of these things, you're going to get this, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And but it doesn't always work like that.
Right.
And that's just the part of growing up. That's the part of growing up as alongside your children.
Yeah.
You're growing up too. So
yes.
you were going to go into this, and we're going to adopt this perfect. And I think so many of us thought the same thing about, you adopt this newborn baby. They haven't experienced trauma, and
exactly.
We just didn't really know, did we?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Okay, so go ahead. You adopt the baby.
So we did. We adopted our perfect baby. She's still pretty perfect.
Yeah.
Although I do now know that adoption is traumatic.
Yeah.
Losing your birth parents is traumatic. There is it's not all beauty. There is brokenness, and now I understand that. So where I come from, parenting her is a lot different than where I thought I would 7 years ago. So we adopted Savannah.
Okay.
She's almost 6 years old. We adopted her when she was 9 months old, actually.
Okay.
It was a really crazy situation. She wasn't even there for her adoption. The judge, we went in and we thought we were losing her. We thought she was going to go be placed with another foster family. And the judge was like, I'm done with this. I'm done with the fighting. And we did the adoption right there. She wasn't there. We had no clue. Our adoption paperwork's actually handwritten.
Wow.
So everything is
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
It was pretty interesting. It was just one of our very first miracles. I remember thinking, this is my child. Like I just knew that we were supposed to adopt her.
Yeah. Was that your first placement?
No, it was not our first placement.
Okay.
We had a few before. Our long-term one right before her was for 15 months. And we actually had the chance to adopt him, and the Lord really put on my heart that we were not supposed to be his forever family. And I fought it for a few months. And I just really kept feeling that his psychiatrist said that he needed to be an only child, and CPS, they were like, well, we don't think so. We're fine. We're fine if he wants to stay here. And the Lord put on my heart to reach out to a family
that you knew.
That I knew. Well, I didn't really know them. I had met them in passing.
Okay.
So I didn't really know them. Like we were friends on Facebook, friends on social media. And I just said, I just have this feeling that you're supposed to be this kiddo's family. And he's like, that doesn't work like that. And I'm like, you're right, it doesn't work like that. So I reached out to CPS, and they were like, that's not how this works. He had significantly high needs, and they thought it's actually going to be harder to place this kiddo. And they ended up placing him, and he's been adopted into their family for years now.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful thing to watch him. He still calls me, so he didn't like Aunt Chelsea because he thought spiders were cooler. So he calls me Spider Chelsea. And he's the cutest thing. And we just FaceTimed him like 2 weeks ago. He's still a part of our family. He's like my nephew.
Wow.
So that's neat. Yeah, it really.
Yeah.
It really was great. So then we adopted Savannah, and we thought, we're going to be done here.
Yeah.
We're good. That's what we came in here to do. Then we took a short-term placement of some twins, and then we kept hearing about this little kid on Facebook, this little baby in the hospital that needed a placement. He was missing his femur bones and his hips. They said he would never walk. He was very medically fragile. I just really felt like we were supposed to say yes to him. And again, my husband's like, we just adopted we have a 9-month-old baby.
Okay,
like,
so you had just
had just adopted her weeks before. And
how old were your biologicals? Children at that point?
Gosh,
I mean, at
5 and 7.
Okay, in school, barely.
At that point, yes. And so I'm like, well, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
That's kind of how we've been living since Charlie came to us. Is if we feel led to do it, we're going to say yes, and we're either going to fail miserably, but we're going to learn something from it, or we're going to do great things. So Charlie came to us. He's missing both of his femur bones, both of his hips. We were told he'll never walk. He had fetal alcohol syndrome, all these different things. And we adopted Charlie at 17 months. At 2.5, Charlie started walking. His condition is very rare. He has bilateral PFFD class D, and it's very, very rare. There's not many people in the world with what he has. And so just watching him compared to what we were told is amazing. This kid skateboards. He just learned how to skateboard. He scooters.
How old is he now?
Does everything. He's 5. So Savannah and him are 8 months to the day apart.
Okay.
And so I was basically raising twins. And that was a season of our lives that was just really, really hectic. So
can we stop there for a little bit and tell me a little bit more about this? Because you bring home a baby. I've seen pictures of Charlie. Yeah. Adorable. But what all did that involve? I mean, obviously you were carrying him. I mean, 2.5 is not really that. I mean, many children are slower to walk. Like 2.5, that's not
right. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
That's what I say. I'm like, I could have missed all of this if we would never have said yes to him.
So what are you dealing with here? I mean, what were you dealing when you first brought him home? What was this like? Because I think this is just the first story that the teeny bit that I've seen and watched. This is like just the first entry point to. I mean, you've already adopted, right? A 9-month-old baby, probably not experiencing tons of traumatic behaviors at that point with her. Now you're taking on a child with trauma and some pretty significant medical conditions.
Yeah. So, we thought we have a child with autism already. We kind of know the medical world. Oh, yeah,
and you've got this going on, too.
So we're like, we kind of know the medical world. Not the same thing, obviously, physical, neurological, but we can, we can do this. Yeah. And he actually, besides the fact that we didn't have a lot of help, a lot of our friends and family were nervous to hold him. We got a lot of like, you're making a poor choice here. This is going to take away from your other kids. This is going to be too much for you. So it was rough, but you could just tell from the minute he came home, he was the sweetest baby. He has an old soul, and I was like, I know that everybody else is telling me this isn't a good idea, but I was like, no, this child's supposed to be here. We didn't know how long. We weren't sure if he was supposed to go to a family member, or if he was going to stay. So when we said yes to him, we weren't committed to any kind of long term.
Okay. What about the fetal alcohol syndrome?
So, we were told that he possibly had fetal alcohol syndrome due to some facial features. And as he got older, when we were at Shriners downtown, the doctor was like, he does not have, these are just his facial features. He does not have fetal alcohol syndrome, and he does not display any of the symptoms of fetal alcohol syndrome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
That's
it's pretty
awesome.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's just back up a little bit more too. Your husband is named Ryan. Ryan. Okay. How are you and Ryan doing as far as, because he was reluctant at first. Yeah. Right. And so Catch me up. Catch me up to how Ryan's doing. I mean, I'm hearing in your voice, you're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. But where's Ryan?
Okay, so now he's right there with me.
Okay,
this
but what
awesome.
about, let's back up to when 9 months, Savannah's 9 months and Charlie's born.
So I'll tell you with Savannah.
How old was Charlie when you got him?
2.5 months.
Okay, you said that.
So
okay.
Savannah Savannah's always been his girl. Like, she's a daddy's girl.
Okay.
So he was like, oh, I'm good. Then he was like, I don't really want to take any more kids. I think we're good. 3's a lot. He's from a smaller family. I'm from a larger family. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, we're good here. And so every time we add more, like one time I may have brought twins home without telling him. And he walked in I thought he was out of town, actually. He was supposed to be out of town. And I thought, I could get away with this for a few days. And then he did come home. His business travel got canceled. And, he walked into twins. And Savannah was 9.5 months old. It was right after we adopted her, right before Charlie came. And he was like, yeah, I just think this is not for me anymore. I think that this is not okay. Yeah. So I had to learn, like, okay, I got to be upfront with him. So now we are on the same page. We know we truly are. We actually don't make a decision until we can get on the same page. Good. We will not, if they call us for a placement and we both can't say yes, we both can't say no, we pray about it. We say we can't make a decision, so it's no for now. Yeah. In general, we talk to our whole family before any kind of placement, and we say, are you guys ready? Do you want to take another child? Like, what does that look like for you guys? We make it as a family decision. Yeah. But now he's good. It's really good because when I'm struggling with a placement, like when our teenager was living with us, we would go in stages where he would be just like, Whoa.
You just said when our teenager was living.
Sorry.
Okay, no, stay. Oh, we're going to go back to that. But he would be, y'all would go in stages.
We would go in so when I was drained, he really would pick it up and he'd say, remember why we're doing this. Like, awesome. This is not about us. Like, you can have your little pity party, but then you need to get up and we're doing this. Yeah. We're not giving up, Yeah. So he really, it was during that time of our fostering season where he really stepped up and he was like, I'm a part of this. Like,
when Charlie came in.
No. When our teenager was here.
Okay. We're getting to the teenager.
No, it really took a while. He really had to stand up because I started lacking. I was always the main caregiver, everything. And at that time I really just compassion fatigue. I was just done with foster care. Yeah. And so he was like, nope. You've done this to me. You have, brought me up every time I'm like, I'm done here. You have, encouraged me to keep going. I have to encourage you.
So you guys have been kind of a balance for each other. Yep. Like, and I get that, there's thank goodness. Like a lady told me, this was about marriage. An older lady told me one time early in our marriage, she said, honey, just don't pack your bags on the same day. Yeah. And I was like, I've never forgot that because there are times that you want to quit. Yeah. In marriage and life. I mean, just in general. And in foster care, it's no different. It's like there's some times that like this is just feels too hard. Yes. And to have a partner that you both, at least at one point, decided we're in this together, can come along and say, we can do this. Yeah. I'll take the slack for a little while, Yeah. So that's good. Okay. So we have Charlie who is now walking, obviously. It sounds like an amazing kid. And then take us from there. We've got Savannah. We got Charlie. We got 2 kids before. Let's not forget them. What are their first names?
Troy and Avery.
Troy's
12 now. Avery's 10. Okay. And then my Charlie and Savannah are both 5.
Okay. Then what happens? You've mentioned a teenager. I don't want to get the story out of order.
Yep. So we fostered some more kiddos in between. That was the point where we decided we were going to start taking older kids. We had babies, toddlers.
Did you find that harder or easier? I mean, when you had the babies.
So I go in stages because sometimes I'm like, I am exhausted. If I can just sleep, I can deal with the behaviors. Okay. And then after the behaviors, I'm like, man, I could deal with the no sleep. Okay. So we decided we're going to foster some older kids. It started out rough. Because with babies, you grow with them. So even if they're experiencing trauma behaviors, you have grown with them through baby, through toddler. So you know how to deal with those. You know how to approach those. When a 7-year-old moves into your house.
Sometimes.
Better than if a child just
yeah.
comes into your house at 7.
I can't even imagine.
And you're like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what works for you. You have to grow with them.
Yeah.
And it takes it. We always say it takes us like 6 months to like really fill out the kid. Most of our kiddos come, they're long-term placements, and they either reunify or, you know, whatever, 15 months, 20 months, 2 years, you know, something like that. So, so when we started taking older kiddos, we also started doing respite for older kiddos. And our agency reached out to us and said, hey, we have a 15-year-old. She just needs a week of respite. And I remember it was actually about 3 years ago this week, or last week, because it was Shark Week. Because I remember she was watching Shark Week upstairs, and my kids were like, are we allowed to watch it with her? I'm like, I don't know. I've never had a teenager. You think she'll let you? You know, like, I don't know. Teenagers are weird, right? So I was like, I don't know. And she was like, yeah, come watch it with me. And they laid on, we have big bean bags upstairs, and they laid on the bean bag, and we listened to them, and, you know, we'd watch them. We kept an eye on them because, again, we had never had a foster teenager in our house. And I was like, they really like her. She really likes them. Okay, great. So the next,
I think that's really cool that you had the wherewithal to not just assume that you could say, yeah, go on upstairs. In other words, like, you were respectful of what is it that she needs.
Right.
And that could be challenging because she's a guest. You have these other littles that you're trying to meet their needs, and they have a desire, but yet I think that was insightful for you to say, I don't know, why don't we ask her? You know what I mean? I think that, just interjection there. That was
well, she I'll tell you though, she loves my kids. I wouldn't have even had to ask her. They wouldn't have had to. She's always been a great big sister. Really, truly,
okay.
always.
Tell me where we go from Shark Week.
Shark Week.
She's at Shark Week. She's just staying.
So she's just staying for a week, and then she went home, and then her foster family reached out and said, hey, did you know that she is up for adoption and like available for adoption, and she really enjoyed your house. Like, would you guys consider adopting her?
And they were not going to adopt her.
They were not. They were not. I don't think at that time they were not an adoptive family. I'm not really sure, but so I think immediately I text back like, no, we've got another kiddo in the home right now. We're waiting to see what happens with her case, and I just don't feel like I can take anything on right now. So we had 5 kiddos in our home at that time, and I was like, I just don't think I can take anything on. And then a few days later, you know, I talked to my husband, and again, we just really felt pressed. We were like, all right, you know, the Lord's speaking to us again. He's saying, you need to say yes. And so we text. I remember I texted the foster mom back, and she never texted me. And I thought, okay, she's mad at me. So, because I said, no, she doesn't want to do it. So it was like a week later. I was like, okay, she never texted me back. So I went ahead and texted the caseworker, and I was like, listen, I really just feel pressed to reach out to you. And she said, oh my gosh, like I had no clue. Apparently the foster mom's phone had broken, so she never got my message. And so I'm sitting there fretting like, oh, well, I guess I heard wrong. Like this should not have been. So we did months of visits. She didn't know. She just thought she was in respite care because they really wanted to make sure, because it had happened before where you're matched with an adoptive placement and it doesn't work out for whatever reason. So we did months of visits from August to December when she moved in with us to make sure it was, she wanted to, like she had to agree, like this is right for me. And so I think it was December when we went over to her house. We all went over there together, and they told her, you know, the Floros want to adopt you and they want you to be a part of their family. Like, do you want to be a part of their family? And I just remember her just crying. I think she was shocked. Like she had no clue that we were coming over, and she, we were all kind of crying, and she was like, yes, I do. And so she finished out the semester at her school and moved in with us just a couple days before Christmas.
Wow. And how many kids did you have at that time?
So she made 6 for us, and we went to Disney the day after Christmas with all 6.
So you had
insane.
You had one other in care, foster.
Yeah.
Okay. How old was that child?
She was like 8 at the time, I think.
Wow. Okay. All right. So how was that? I mean, you're making it sound so easy. I can't even imagine, because just, I mean, you know, that's a lot of different, like, you know, I notice in my home, you know, different people's trauma is triggered by other people's trauma.
Yeah.
Right? So you have all these things going on, these dynamics going on. Like, where were you at? And you went to Disney. Gosh.
Yeah, Disney was a fun time. No, not really, actually.
Not really.
Because my husband went to the football game on New Year's Eve, but he thought it would be nice for me to take the kids to Disney while he went to the football game. So it was he gifted me tickets to take all the kids by myself. It was very kind of him.
Yeah.
Very kind of him. So I was good. I think I was on like a, you know, when you're like, this is great. Everything's great.
Was she helpful with the littles?
At first, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then she became a teenager that was like in our family and was like, these aren't my kids.
Yeah.
These are your kids. But yes, she was during that Disney trip.
Yeah.
She was really, really helpful. And a few months went by and, you know, we were all in the honeymoon stage.
Sure.
And then that's when things with the other child in our home and her, it was just, it seemed like everything just started to crash at the same time. And that is when I just felt overwhelmed. I felt like I was becoming depressed. I started therapy with someone at the church.
What did it look like? So you had this, is it a 7-year-old you said?
She was like 8 at the time, and 9 maybe by then.
Like, what were you starting to feel? What were some of the things that you were starting to feel?
I was like, you know, if we move to a different state, we can just not foster at all, and we never have to foster again. But if we stay here, you know, I was legitimately like, we could pick our family up and move, and we could, and not. I just wasn't feeling myself. I was very down. Like I say, like the whole time during foster care, I was always the one like, rah, we can do this, and you know, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just don't think we can do this. And there's legitimately times where people can say, hey, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. But it was like a switch hit. One day I was like, super foster mom, like can do everything. And the next day I was like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Do you remember
what it was that triggered you?
Yes. I don't want to talk about that, but
okay.
There was a big incident that happened, and our house just went under investigation. Okay. And that was the first time I had experienced it. And you know, they tell you it's not if, it's when. Everybody gets investigated. But I don't like to be in trouble. I'm a rule follower. I like to do things the right way. I don't like to be in trouble at all. Yeah. And so that was my breaking point. I was like, I don't want to be investigated. I'm scared just for my other kids, for everything. I don't understand why we're being investigated when it's something a child did.
Chelsea, I think this is a really big issue right now. And especially, you know, CPS is under serious investigation. Yes. And so we were just talking, I'm on the board of a fostering group, fostering family. And we were talking about this and just the pressure that foster parents will be under and are under. Yes. And you have children in their homes, and you had, you know, older children, and you can just assume that things, you know, can happen. Not things you do, but that people get angry and accusations fly and all this stuff. And I just think that is a really tough. I mean, I think this is a real issue for a lot of people. Like that, you're not the only one. Like you said, it's not.
I know when seasoned foster parents would tell me like you will be investigated. I'm like, we've been years without being investigated. Yeah. I didn't think it would ever happen because again, I'm a perfectionist. When they come to my house, everything is in order. They've you know, everything. I've never had any kind of issues, and so. When it happened, I feel like it triggered something in me.
Fear.
It was complete fear. Yeah. And so, you know, the CPS caseworkers were like, sorry, like, don't worry about it. You're fine. This isn't, but I could hear what they were saying, but I could not I was like, nope.
Well, I think there's a shame factor that comes in. It's like, I had been questioned on a few things from my agency at one point. Things that were totally, in my book, amazing things I did, and yet they were looked at as against regulations. And I was like, And I could feel the shame. I mean, just like shame.
Yeah. Yes.
And then anger underneath that, you know? So yeah, I get it.
We're under a lot of, I know that, you know, we're not always positively looked at in the media and everything, but foster parents are really under a huge amount of stress, and we have a lot of rules. I just pulled out, I couldn't find my placement paperwork the other day, and I pulled out my minimum standards book, and it's a journal like this big, you know, the big black binder. Those are all the rules that we're supposed to follow.
Yeah.
And I know. My caseworker's like, have you read that yet? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know all the rules.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a big, I mean, I can imagine that would be big. And so your house is full. So then what how'd you handle it? What'd you do?
So I, like I say, I immediately started going to counseling.
Yeah.
I knew that I had to talk to somebody besides my husband, because I don't think he could listen to me talk about it anymore. He's just different than me. He doesn't need to talk. We're under investigation. He was like, okay, like it's not a big deal. He's not the same. He doesn't internalize things the way that I do. Yeah. And so I really knew I needed to go talk to somebody. And so that was the first step for me. And I went and I basically told him, I think the first time I went, I couldn't even talk. I was just crying so hard. And I was like, somebody's listening to me and not judging me. That's one of the hardest parts, because a lot of my friends and family, when I tell them the bad things that happen, it's the first thing that comes to their mouth. It's like, well, you're choosing this. You don't have to do this. You don't. Yeah. And I don't have to do this. I don't have to be a foster parent. I'm aware of that. Yeah. But it's a calling that has been given to me, and I haven't been told not to do this anymore. Yeah. And so, I
mean, I gotta stop you again, because isn't that just another thing that we deal with is, you know, giving ourselves permission to need help, to need support, because after all, you know, the old saying, like, you made the bed. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yowzers. That's not compassionate at all. Yeah. And thank goodness we made the bed, right? Because who else is going to?
And that's exactly what I say is, like, if I stop, are you gonna do it for me? Like, who is gonna do this if I'm not here? I mean, not saying that there's not a ton of other people, but I mean, like, the specific kids that I'm saying yes to, or whatever. Are you going to come in and say yes to those kids? Yeah. So I don't really feel a burden to do foster care. I mean, I do feel burdened by what I know and what I've seen, but it's a calling. Sure. I know that I am called to do this, so I can't turn my back to it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. So when you went to counseling, did you immediately start to feel relief, or was this been...
Yeah, I mean, truly, I was like, oh my gosh, someone's listening to me. The cool thing about my counselor is he speaks like hard truth to you. He doesn't, he's not sugar. He's not like, how are you feeling today? Yeah. He's like, no, this is what you need to do. This is what you're experiencing. This is how we're going to walk through this together. We're going to journey through this together. And I was like, okay, this is great. He told me, I believe you have secondary trauma and compassion fatigue. And he said that the thing that made him think that is when I told him, like, I want to move. Like, I want to leave my entire life behind that I have made here, and I just want to go pick up and move somewhere. And he's like, yeah, that's not normal. That's, you are fatigued. This is too much. But he didn't tell me, hey, you need to quit. He said, let's walk through this together.
Yeah. And it's pretty common, secondary trauma and compassion fatigue for foster and adoptive parents.
Yes.
For any caregivers, right?
Right. Yes.
So tell us exactly what that looks like. I want to move away. I don't want to get out of bed. Maybe sometimes people might feel like that.
Yeah. It was
angry at the people that you're caring for. Right?
Yeah. It was very conflicted because I knew that I loved all of these children, but I also was just so overwhelmed with them. And I felt like I could be doing all of these things that all these people have told me all these years that I should be doing instead of fostering. Yeah. So, there's just a little maybe resentment. There was just so many things.
That is a symptom, right? People need to know what the symptoms are, because if you start to have these symptoms, like, we need to reach out for help. And that is one, is becoming very resentful of the people that you're caring for, even though you love them tremendously, wanting to run away. running to hide.
Yeah. And I had never felt like that before. And it took counseling, and it took me, that's when I said, I have to have more support. I didn't have a lot of support before then. And I was like, I've got to have support. Like, I'm talking, I need meals. Yeah. I need someone to come over and sit with all the kids at the house and let me just go for a walk, let me take a nap. I need someone to sit in the car with me while I drive to these medical appointments that I sit 4 hours in the waiting room. And I just started like asking people. And sometimes I would ask 10 people and only one would say yes. And I say, hey, I got my yes. So I decided that was the time where I was I was going to put my pride aside, and I was going to need help. And that's the only thing that kept me sane is I started becoming self-aware of what I really needed in order to continue fostering. Because if I didn't start getting it, I was going to have to stop, because it was no longer healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for, it's not healthy for anybody in the family if one person is dragging and you can't get them up.
That's, I don't know, how much if you've seen any of these podcasts, but that's the whole premise. That was the whole light bulb for me, lesson for me. And throughout now I have 23 years of parenting. My oldest is 23. But my big light bulb is we can't give what we don't have.
Exactly.
Who wants to be rescued by a lifeguard who can't swim? I mean, that's just not going to work. Yeah. And so I think that what you're saying is so important. You have to become self-aware. You have to recognize like what it is we're feeling and why, so that we're not spewing it all unintentionally and unknowingly out there, so you created the support, and that's something that I've seen on, actually, it's probably how I became aware of you, is because a mutual Facebook friend, but this is an actual friend of ours, is part of your support team.
Yes.
And so how did you, obviously your counselor was guiding. You said he was going to walk alongside you. So he's probably did he encourage you to get a support system? Is that how it started?
I am sure he did. I can't remember, but
You did.
I am sure he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I knew I needed a lot of support at that time. Okay. And so I just started asking for everything I needed.
Yeah.
And eventually somebody said yes.
Sitting with kids.
Yes. So many things that I needed. And people were actually glad the people that did say yes, they were glad. They were like, thank you for asking. We didn't ever know how to help you. And I'm like, well, I had shame about asking for help because yes, I signed up for this. You didn't sign up for this. Yeah. But at the same time, like, it takes a community. Like, foster parents turnover rate is 1 year usually. So I've been doing this for so many years now without a support. So now I'm demanding one.
Good for you.
And I did. And people were like, no, we wanted to help. We just really didn't know what to do, or we thought you had it all together. You look like you have it all together. And I'm like, no, not so much. Yeah. So that's why the importance of sharing that, hey, we don't have it all together, but we need your help. We need whatever you can offer. There's so many things that people can offer. They think they can't offer anything, but that's why I like to share.
So
there's a lot of ways.
Was this the time? So you have a vlog. That means
/blog.
Yeah. That, for you people who don't know what that means, it means a video blog. But you write.
Yes.
And you have a Facebook group and an Instagram group called Real Life Foster Moms.
Yes.
Was this the birthplace of it?
No, I had started it in 2017. So it was before my teenager came.
Okay.
I think it was when we started fostering older children, about that time.
So, but you're getting, at this point, Real Life Foster Moms. Tell us what that means.
Real Life Foster Moms. So I just I started on National Foster Care Awareness Month, and I just shared some things like reasons why you can foster even though you say you can't. And people started sharing it, and I was like, all right, let me just make a separate page for it so they can share it from there instead of my private Facebook page. And people just started sharing, and I was like, well, let me just share another story, and let me make another video that will teach people. I try to make my videos funny but also informative so that people could actually learn and take it in and think it's funny. Some people might not think it's funny, but that's okay. And people just started sharing it. People started liking it. And then I started sharing stories from outside, like
other people's stories.
Yeah, aged out foster youth, other adoptive parents, biological parents, like from every view. And so I started giving other people a platform on my platform, sharing it, and that.
So do you find that therapeutic for yourself?
I do. I sometimes I find it embarrassing, or I'm like, I wonder if people think this is embarrassing, but or you know, they're like, this is weird. But I think it's important because 90% of the comments are, oh my gosh, like I just felt like this today. And so then it makes me go, okay, well, I'm not alone. And I know I'm not alone, but sometimes when you're sitting there in the trenches, you just feel alone. Even if there's 100 people next to you, you feel alone.
Absolutely. Like, that's what I started this for me. For me, you know, I think I told you that when I talked to you on the phone. It's very therapeutic, and the best therapeutic things are like symbiotic. Like I get something from hearing you, and you get something from, and people are getting something from helping your family. I mean, they're feeling like I'm helping somebody that really needs help, and you're going, yes, you're helping me, and I really need help.
Right.
So, okay, you have teenager. What about the placement? What about the placement? The 8-year-old.
She ended up moving on. She's lives with her brother. I don't really know. I don't really know details. But she ended up moving on, and we took about 6 months off. We were, like I say,
you still had the teenager.
We still had the teenager, and you know, my husband and I talk about this all the time. If she wouldn't have been there and we weren't committed to her, we would have probably stopped foster care. That's how deep in I was. Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And she was still there, and we were like, all right, we've committed. We're in. We're not leaving.
Can we talk about her a little bit?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, let's talk about her, because I think, you know, you've talked about, you know, you are intentionally choosing placements. I don't want to call them difficult placements, but I would say placements that are not easy to find. Is that what we would call it?
I feel like they're choosing me. No.
Yes. Okay. Then you're being willing to say yes to some placements that are not.
Like,
we don't even have to call them. This isn't personal. This is just older children are more difficult to place.
I know.
Children with medical needs are more difficult to place. So all I'm saying is, it's not about the child.
No,
it's just a category.
It's the category,
of place.
unfortunately, that.
Yeah, so you're saying yes to this. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about a teenager, because you're brave, because a teenager has had complex trauma, like trauma on trauma on trauma on trauma, most of them, because they've Yeah.
And I had never parented. We are actually 13 years apart.
Yeah, and you're going way out of your birth order.
Yeah.
Okay, so you haven't
way out of birth order. Yes, she is by far out of birth order.
Okay.
And I had never parented a teen, and I was like, we're just going to go all in and see what happens. We did a lot of learning too, obviously. We didn't do everything right during that process. There's just no way. We did seek out a lot of people with other older people with kids that age, or that had already adopted teenagers, to get advice. But trauma's different for every child. And so a lot of the advice that I got from those people didn't match up with her. So I felt like we were just Hail Marying the whole time with her. I hope we did good. She's doing really good now. She lives on her own with her boyfriend, and we see her often. I just saw her. I just went to her office, not too far from us. So, I mean, she's still a part of our family.
There's a phrase, and I need to give credit to who it's from, but it's it sounds weird when I've said it before, but good enough parenting. Have you heard that before? But it reminds me, when you're talking about, we didn't do it all perfectly, right?
Yeah.
But there's an intentionality. And sometimes when we're trying to do things perfectly, like, it just makes a big mess of things.
Yeah.
But sometimes we just have to accept this is good enough. You know what I mean? Like, and this is not my phrase. This is a phrase of somebody that I'm gonna have to look up when I get out of here. But I like that phrase. It's very compassionate, and you know, just the intention of saying, "I choose you." And you shared a little bit about raising a teenager, and you talked about boundaries. And I liked what you were saying. Are you comfortable sharing a little bit about, without getting personal?
What part did
Well, just, you know, I think being consistent, being connected, being loving, but also having boundaries.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of times in foster care, at least the way that we were directed with her was, you just love them through it, love them through it. And there wasn't really a consequence, but then the things that she would do, she would say, well, you're just letting me do this? Okay. So she would keep doing them or take the next step. And so we decided, my husband and I, we were like, we are going to love her through it, but we're also going to show her that there are consequences. Nothing crazy. We're not hard disciplinarians in our home. But when behavior, and we got to a point where behaviors where she was trying to get kicked out of our house. And we would say, no, we're not going to do that. You're going to help me pick the weeds, and we're going to do this together. And I know you really don't like doing it, but we're going to do it together. We're going to grow together. And, we still love you, and you're going to stay here. And she'd be like, why? Why are you doing this? So for us, it was really important to show her that. And now I feel like when I see how she is now, I see that what we did really worked for her. Yeah. Or maybe that's how she was going to be anyways. Yeah. But for the most part, I think that she's just an incredible, the statistics for teenagers are homeless, unwed mothers, prisons, dead, drug addicts, she is full-time job. Wow. She is making it on her own. She's making great choices. I'm so incredibly proud of her. And I just think all those statistics that she was supposed to be, she's not. And so
I don't think boundaries equal, necessarily strict or not permissive. I don't think it's about being permissive or not permissive. I think it's about life, this is the boundary. Yeah. And it keeps you safe. You know what I mean? This boundary, just like a playpen for a small child, and these are children when they're 15, more likely about 6 or 7 emotionally age wise. I mean, they say sometimes half, right? Right. So you're just coming backwards. And I liked how you described it to me, just like even a boundary keeps you in. You're not leaving our home. We're not kicking you out. This is the boundary. Right. And yet outside this boundary is unsafe. Right. So stay close, I think that was beautiful. Okay. Let's bundle this all up. I know there's so much. You have a long story. I know. And I have the baby now. I know. That's where I want to go. I want to go to the baby because you're dealing with another big yes that you said yes to. Tell us about this little Rico. And I'm assuming that's not his real name.
No, it's not his real name. Yeah. So we had another long-term placement when our teenager Amara was here. We took a little baby named Maze, and that's also not his real name. Okay. But he was with us for a while, and once we finally, so then Amara moved out. She became a teenager, 18, and she's
an adult
on her own, an adult. And she left us. We opened our home back up because Maze was a basic, very easy child, just a toddler. Yeah. So we were like, we're going to go back to 6. So we had decided we were going to say yes to 5 and under and 13 and over. So we don't like to do our kids' ages, our 4. Anyways, there's a lot of competition in our family already. So we like to try to push it to the outside. And we got a few phone calls, and we said yes. They said no. We said no. Yeah. They called back, this, that. And then we got a call for a baby. They're like, he has a hole in his heart. And we were like, oh, well, that's okay. We can do that. Yeah. We
did no femurs.
Yeah. Hips. We have autism. We have, a tick syndrome. We've got all sorts of stuff. We can do a hole in our heart. So we drove 6 hours away to go stay the night in the hospital. And this is all during COVID, and they weren't supposed to have 2 people in the hospital, but we both wanted to go. Yeah. So they let us both in. Yeah. sneaking in the hospital and we get to go see him in the NICU. And it was my first experience getting a child from the hospital. Okay. Usually they bring them to us. Mm-hmm. So this is our first time we got to go. They let us stay a night in the hospital room with him. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But he had oxygen. We were like, what do we do with that? Like, we have never experienced this. This is not exactly what we were thinking.
Right.
And we get home and we had to take an ambulance home because, again, they didn't know if he was.
So you just left your car. Oh, I guess one of you drove the car back.
Yeah.
You
My
said
husband
6
drove
hours
the car.
away. Okay.
A 9-hour ambulance drive. So I rode in the ambulance 9 hours, and the ambulance people, they take him off the oxygen and hand to us. And I said, how do I put him on the oxygen here? And they're like, nobody taught you? I'm like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, are you sure that this child? So here's when I put on our community Facebook page, I'm drowning. Again, I am freaking out. I think that I wasn't prepared for this and I need help. Yeah. And a respiratory therapist from my neighborhoods and a nurse from my neighborhood were like, we're coming over. We're going to come help you. Wow. For the first couple weeks. The respiratory therapist would help me learn how to tape his face. She helped me give him baths. Because I was worried. I was like, he has this, the thing on his foot, his oxygen, all of that. And so we were like, okay, we're getting used to things. And then on Christmas Day,
this might have been when I first saw you on Facebook. I saw an ambulance.
Yes. So on Christmas night, so he had gotten a feeding tube placed on like the 21st. And they said, if he has to get the feeding tube that goes in his nose, you'll be home in a few days. If not, if he has to get the one in his stomach, you're going to have to be here for Christmas. And in foster care, you can't leave. We have to stay at the hospital. So we were like, we're going to miss Christmas together. So we were like, please don't let us miss Christmas. And so my husband got home on Christmas Eve from the hospital with him. And he just got the NG tube, which goes down his nose into his stomach. And on Christmas night, something was not right. And we reached out to the nurses that in our neighborhood that had said, reach out to us. I mean, I'm talking, it's like 11:50 at night.
Wow.
And I'm waking them up. I'm calling them. I'm like, something's wrong. Sending videos. They're like, call 911. So we called 911. They walked into our house at 12:01 on the 26th. So we were like, hey, we made it. We asked for Christmas and we got Christmas. Wow. And so they walked in at 12:01. And my husband was like, I'm going to go. You stay at home with the kids. He packed a night's bag. He's like, we'll probably be out tomorrow. Yeah. And 3 months later, 90 days, we got out. And we had to stay the whole 90 days. My husband and I, we did have CPS babysitters come in and help us give us a few nights. But for the most part, my husband and I stayed all day and all night at that hospital. And he ended up coming home. He is on a ventilator with a ram cannula. He has a feeding tube now.
Still, he's on a ventilator?
Yes, through a ram cannula though, so
I have no idea what that means. Throat.
He requires things that I would have never have said yes to had they called me and said, "Hey, we've got this kiddo. He's on this, and I would have said no. I'm not qualified." Because I stayed in the hospital for 3 months with him, and I did most of it. Because my husband stayed home with the other kid. I mean, he was amazing. Luckily, it was during COVID. He usually travels, and COVID, we weren't traveling for work, so he was able to stay home with the kids.
Did your support team come in and help? Because obviously he has to work.
Oh my gosh! Not only did they come in and help, I had someone hire a cleaning lady to come clean my house one time because my husband was home alone with the 5 other kids, and. We had DoorDash coupons, or not coupons, but people were sending us gift cards to DoorDash. Yeah. So we were the hospital food was just awful. And so we were able to DoorDash, eat. Someone paid for our parking. A local, the Moses Closet in Tomball, they were like, we would love to sponsor you because you're going to have to park. Right. We had to valet park a lot. And the whole community stepped up in ways that, I mean, I'm telling you, we had a meal train for over 3 months. My husband and I did not cook a meal for over 3 months. Wow. That is not normal. Yeah. That is a community of people. Some people I didn't even know who they were. Some people were in other states and they were like, my friend told me about you and I just felt called to give you a $50 gift card. That's not normal. That's amazing. And so we wouldn't have been able to do the whole thing. I mean, we were, like I say, one of us was there at all time. That was
unbelievable.
An hour plus away. And so
how do you feel like that? Obviously that was rough on your family. It was rough on your other kids.
It was.
How do you feel? I mean, how are they doing?
So now we're all good. We've been back home for 3 months. We did do another short stint in the hospital, but we're back now.
Yeah.
They're good. You know, while we were in the hospital for a while, although we love this baby baby is, you know, he has stolen our hearts.
Sure.
I did feel a little bit bad. I felt like, am I going to keep doing this to my kids for the rest of their lives? Like, where I'm leaving them. I left them for almost 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, I did like 70 days out of the 90 days because it was easier for my husband to work at home when the kids were at school.
Yeah.
And so, is this going to scar them? Like I had those thoughts. Is this going to scar them? I'm leaving them and I'm only FaceTiming. Sometimes I'm going a week with just FaceTiming them.
Wow.
And you know, we're in there for 90 days. I'm thinking, is this ever going to end?
Wow.
Are we ever going to get out of here?
Yeah.
Eventually we did.
Yeah.
And so I had those feelings, and my kids they weren't as affected by it as I thought they were going to be, because they love that baby. They were like, how is he doing? Can we FaceTime him?
And you were probably being really open and honest about what was going on.
Yes, we are always open. Our kids, anything that's age appropriate, our kids know. They're in on a lot of our decision making.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Girl, you are a real life foster mom. Thank you for taking the time to share your story. I mean, I feel like you could have like chapters 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But I think that what I would hope everybody would come away with today is you can do a lot harder things than you think you can. What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty big, powerful message that you said. You can do harder things. As Brene Brown says, you know, lean into hard things because it grows us. Nobody wants to do something hard, but you just, when you're there and then you move out, you look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah.
And then I would say the other thing I heard you say very strongly is build a support system.
Absolutely. You have to. There's no way you're going to make it years. I mean, if your goal is to continue to foster and continue to help families and
build a support system.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I heard, and it's probably because I listen for it, but is that become self-aware.
Yes.
Yeah. Become self-aware, because you were starting to drown. You were starting to your treading water was starting to go under your nose a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And so, is there anything else that you would say was? Those were my big
I think that's
shiny bright lights that I heard from you today.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that foster parents, we're regular. We're not these. You know, we hear like, oh, you're an angel. I'm like, I'm not an angel. We're regular people, and we're choosing to do hard things. We're not amazing to do these things. We're doing them just hoping that we can do a good job.
I mean, take a look at the shirt, right?
Yeah.
It says, yes, we too get attached,
Yeah.
right? Because isn't that kind of the premise of what you're saying? I could,
Right.
I couldn't get so attached and then give them away.
I could never. And I'm like, well, I'm not a heartless person, and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, our one kiddo just reunified and went home, and people are like, I could never do it. And I'm like, what? You could never help a family come back together? Like, do you see what I just got to witness? I just got to witness a family come back together, and you can do it. I promise. They're just regular people.
Yeah. So we're just regular people, right? But what we grow, I think we're regular people that grow into some pretty, because when you do hard things, you get stronger and you get better and you grow deeper and you're rooted down more, you know? So so okay, so we can find you at Real Life Foster Moms.
Real Life Foster Mom on Facebook.
On Facebook.
And Instagram. I'm trying with Instagram.
Okay, and Instagram. That's some pretty cool stuff. And then you have a YouTube channel, right? I saw you on YouTube, not so much.
But
okay.
I lost the password.
Oh, okay. Well, I found it somehow. So, anyway, so we'll just stick with Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook and Instagram. I'll put those in the show notes so they can click on them.
Okay.
And then, man, let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
Want to?
Yeah.
All right. You can teach me a lot of things. So I'm gonna stay in touch.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, you can. So, thank you guys. Thanks for sticking around for this story. I hope that you will take away those big nuggets that I did. As always, like, go to mamaswell.com and subscribe. Please do that. I send out an email once a week, and you get to hear a little bit about what's going on in the Hutton family and blogs that I'm writing about each episode, as well as in the fall, we're going to start some book studies, some small group studies, or just be like maybe 10 of us going through some good books, and you'll be the first to hear about that if you're a subscriber. Share, and not just podcasts. Share your struggles, share your hard stuff, share your real life foster mom stories, because nobody wants to feel like they are alone in this really tough stuff. So have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Mama's well.
Yes, she is.